Okay.
Hey, what's up everybody? Sean here, Krusty Customs Garage, back with you with with more work on Ruby. She's the gift that keeps on giving. Coming soon is going to be a little mini movie called, a spoof of Fast and the Furious called The Festiva Makes Me Furious. Anyway, today, let me set this down somewhere, my remote. Yeah, before I start today's video, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to a few people. This past week, your guy Sean here turned 50, the big 50. I'm still out here plugging away on YouTube, trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and I'm really close. Just a couple hundred subscribers away from hitting that mark, which I thought I'd never get to. So I want to thank everybody who has recently subscribed. My channel has gone from about 210 subscribers to almost 800 subscribers in 2 weeks. I don't know what's going on, but I think, I really don't know what to think. But thank you. So that's the first shout out, is to everybody who has recently subscribed to the channel. There's going to be a lot of different material working on both of these cars, Ruby and Esther, our 65 Rambler. There's some stuff I'm going to do on that before she takes her winter nap. So that's coming. But today, what we've got is a clunk in the front end of Ruby, which initially I thought was this, which is an inner tie rod. So on the passenger side, well, initially I thought it was a strut mount, but all the suspension has been replaced and it's still clunking on every bump. So then I thought it was an inner tie rod because the wheel would move up in the air. The wheel would move from front to back, have a little slop and a clunk in it. So I bought inner tie rods and outer tie rods from the Zone to put in there. So I started working on the car. I started shooting a video. That has been scrapped because it's not the inner or outer tie rods. It's not the strut mounts. It is the entire steering rack has worn out on the passenger side. There's some sort of bushing that the shaft rides on. So when you steer the car, it has a little gear in it that moves this shaft on each side and makes your wheels turn. So that has to be replaced. I have gotten a rack from, it looks terrible, but don't judge it. It's actually in pretty good shape. This is a steering rack from a 94 Ford Aspire, and that is an upgrade for Ruby, which I've driven the Aspire. I drove one back in like the early 2000s, late 90s. No, not for me. I remember trying to out the window, trying to paddle the car to go faster in the air. It was that slow, and I think Ruby is actually, it feels faster to me. But that was, almost 30 years ago I drove that thing. Anyway, so I just want to give you a little rundown of what you will probably need to do this job. It's really not that hard. This is a manual steering rack. There's no power steering lines to deal with or any of that crap. So that makes it a lot easier to work on. And again, excuse the sweat. I've been cleaning out Krusty Customs Garage, which is behind you. It looked like a bomb went off, and now it just looks like maybe a hand grenade maybe went off in here. It's a little more tolerable. So that's why I'm sweaty already. And it's about 9 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, what do you need to do the steering rack on your Festiva? Well, a steering rack, which I showed you. I'm going to replace the inner and outer tie rods because I'm here, and they're very cheap. I am also going to need probably some needle nose. There's some clips in there I gotta pop off. I just have a couple screwdrivers just handy, just in case. A 3/8 socket set for getting the rack off the firewall. Of course, a ratchet and extension for that. I've got some impact sockets. I know I'm gonna need at least the 14 mil to get the wheels off. And my best friend, my DeWalt cordless impact, my brushless impact, which has been awesome for a few years now. That's the basics of what you're going to need to get the rack off. And what I'm going to do now is just pop the tires off. I'm sure you don't really need to see that, but we'll just speed through that. I'll move the camera. There's a little bit of there's a bug screen here, which makes the cars maybe look a little grainy. So we'll probably get that out of the way. We'll position the camera in the shade. And we'll just do a quick little speed through, and then we'll get up in the rack. I'll give you a little overview of what you need to take off. We'll take the rack off and compare the Festiva rack to the upgrade Aspire rack. Hopefully all of the people online were correct on the Festiva, or FordFestiva.com on Facebook. That's the page. If you have a Festiva and you're not on there, you're just loco, okay? Because if you're new to Festivas like me, I've only had mine for a few months. I've already rebuilt pretty much the whole thing. But if you're not on there, that's just crazy talk. Because there are so many knowledgeable people on there that have already helped me many times. Speaking of people that are very helpful and nice, shout out number 2 goes to my really good friend John from Florida and his wife. Ooh, sorry. I'm not editing that out. That was a slip that I kind of enjoyed making. John and his girlfriend Astrid came all the way from Florida to celebrate my 50th birthday with me this past week. It was super sweet of them to come up here. We had a lot of fun, and I love the hell out of both those people. I've known John for coming up on 20 years now, and he is my best friend. I've got a few really, really close friends and a really tight-knit group of guys, so I'm just going to shout out all of them as they weren't able to come up for my birthday. Not a big deal. We all have lives. I got lucky to have John and Astrid pop in from Florida, just pop in. You know, that's what people do. John, Astrid, Gumby, of course, has been huge for this channel. My buddy Blake, I don't know if you really watch all these videos, but again, thank you for everything, for being such a good friend. I'm kind of getting emotional. I'm a half a century old now. I'm getting old as shit. And I just really, really value these strong friendships that I have. There's a bunch of other people in Florida as well that are good friends of mine. Chris, you know who you are, nicknamed Shrek. There's tons of other people. I don't know why I'm brain farting, but I'm going to give one more little shout out, and since it's the biggest one, and that is a shout out to my amazing and beautiful wife Heather for tolerating all of this bullshit with cars. Hopefully something comes of it. It seems like we're building towards that, and that's very exciting for me. And hopefully it's very exciting for her and everyone else that's been involved. Gumby, John's been in videos. Astrid was in a video a little bit. My hot sauce video was the last full-length video that I released earlier this week. But anyway, Heather, thank you for tolerating me. I love you. We're going to celebrate our 10-year next year, and I'm going to make sure that it's big. And your 50th birthday, sorry I said your age, too bad, comes up next year. So be ready for some bonkers stuff to go down. Alright, so wheels and tires are off. That's simple. I'll bring you in here for a little up close and personal. I'll show you what bolts you need to remove. You get the screen out of the way, of course. Every single video I make would not be complete without a motorcycle, or in this case, a garbage truck, ruining my shot. Alright guys, so here we are kind of under the passenger side. You can see there that my outer tie rod is hammered, probably original. And of course, up in there is your steering rack. Same thing on the driver's side, the tie rod is hammered. There's my new strut, and there is the new upper mount. I'll show you that, why not? There's the new upper mount. It is from a Kia Rio 2001. It's supposed to be a little bit nicer than the stock Festiva stuff that comes on these cars. Of course, the lower control arms are done, sway bar bushings, new axles, all kinds of stuff. So let's get up under the car. I'll show you what needs to happen under there, and then we'll get that rack out. Be right back. Alright, I'm really hoping that we get a good shot of this. I think we are, yep. So there's straps that hold the rack to the car, to the firewall. So you can see there's one strap there. There's a bolt on the bottom, which you can kind of see. There's a bolt up on top. It's kind of up in there, so it's easier to get to from the top. It looks like 14mm bolts. Exactly the same situation on the other side. It's just more difficult to get that shot in frame, so we won't. We're going to get that stuff, we're going to get the tie rods, outer tie rods disconnected. And then we'll come back and I'll show you one more thing that you're going to need to disconnect before you can proceed. So just be patient. I'm going to pop these tie rods, the outers, and then we'll come right back to you. Ooh, I just noticed I have a hell of a leak here. Holy shite. Oh, that's oil pan gasket. Luckily I have one of those. Yeah, oh, she's a leaker. Okay, I better check the oil while I'm at it. Be right back. Alright, as I took off the passenger side outer tie rod already. I wanted to bring you around to the driver's side. You can see this is pretty whipped too. The boot is just crumbling. Surprised this car drove as nicely as it does. But anyway, I just wanted to give you a quick how-to on how to remove the outer tie rod. There's a cotter pin right here that you have to bend and pull out this side. Then what I do is I take I got a little 1.5 pound ball peen here. Just give it a couple taps on the spindle. Be careful not to hit the threads or the castle nut, because you'll mess it up, and then, you know, that could lead to other issues, especially if you don't have to replace your outers if you're doing a rack. But if you're replacing your outer tie rods, I guess it doesn't matter as much. But yeah, after you loosen that bolt, which I have not yet, you just give it a few like that. The passenger side came right off, popped right out. It's already loose and dangling. So I'm going to do the same to this side, and then we'll get to the next step, which I think is going to be the probably the most difficult, but still not very difficult anyway. So yeah, we'll be right back with the next step in removing the steering rack. Be right back. Alright guys, we're back up top now. Both tie rods are off. I'll show you that. On the driver's side, you can see this thing is still got grease in there. It's still surprisingly decent feeling. Of course, it would eventually fail with the rips. Speaking of rips, you can see down in here, here's where the coupler is from the column to the rack. This boot had already been like torn a little bit, so I kind of just enhanced that rip. There is a 12 millimeter bolt. You probably can't see that too well in there, but there's a 12 millimeter bolt on that coupler, and that's going to crack off pretty easily. It did for me. And then once you do that, I'm going to return the steering wheel to as close as neutral as I can. I guess it really doesn't matter on this rack because it's coming out anyway, but I'm going to. And then we're going to take the 4 bolts out that I showed you on the firewall. I think those are 14s as well. And then we're going to wrestle this rack out of here, take a look at it, and then try to get the other one set up as best we can, and back on the car and back out on the road with no clunking, hopefully. So wish me luck. I'm a single man show here today, or else I'd have a camera person try to get up in there while I'm loosening this bolt. But it really is just a 12 millimeter bolt, and truth told, it's already loose. So this shouldn't take very long at all. I'll bring you up with me when I get the other 4 firewall bolts out of the car, and then we'll pop this rack off here. Well, all right. So after some fun with the lower driver's side strap bolt that holds the rack on. This is the rack that was on the Festiva. And then there's the upgrade rack. It looks worse. That's going to go on the car. I wanted to show you guys this. So the passenger side is over here on this Festiva rack. And it's been this bushing. There's bushings on each end. So there's a bushing in here. There's a bunch of seals. Woo! And then you make your way over here, and I'll show you what's been going on. This is the shaft that goes inside of the rack when you turn the wheel, and that coupler goes here. So this slides in and out. This is the Festiva rack, and this is rust. And you can't, I know you won't be able to see it, but when I run my finger over this section, it has actually worn into the rack itself. So as it's been banging around in here because there's a bad bushing, this is where my clunking is. So it's been actually wearing away at this steering rack. I'm really glad I got in here to take a look at this. Some of this is grease, but some of this, there's rust. I think that's rust. Well, maybe it isn't. It's just like super like plastic or something. It's gross, but it's all the way around, and I'm kind of glad I pulled this. So I guess what I need to do now, I've never done a steering rack, ever, So I guess it's good to start with a manual. I'm going to center my Festiva rack and mark the length of it on this piece of wood that it's on. And I'm also going to measure it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the new Aspire rack the same length, and I should be fine, in theory. I just got to make sure that the tie rods are put on properly. I do have new Festiva inner and new Festiva outer tie rods, like I showed earlier. So I'm just going to disassemble all this nonsense after I do my measurements, and then hopefully I can bolt this all back together, smash it in the car. Oh, and by the way, if you're replacing your inner and outer tie rods at the same time, before you unbolt anything, pop those inner tie rods on the rack while it's on the car, and then take the outers off and get those out of the way, and then unbolt your steering rack and your coupler and take it off the car. I did it in one piece. It was not the most pleasant thing in the world, but I will tell you that you have to turn the steering wheel all the way to the driver's side, unbolt everything, pull the passenger side outer tie rod through the hole in the chassis, and then pull it down next to the axle. And you'll know when you get in there what I'm talking about. My hands are very dirty, and this is a brand new camera, so I really don't even want to be filming this. But I just wanted to tell you, steering rack pulled all the way to the right, meaning like turn it so the gear is all the way to the driver's side, and then you'll be able to push the rack all the way to the driver's side, and then pull it down underneath the car next to the... Alright guys, we're back. As you can see, a little bit of a wardrobe change here. A couple of hours has gone by, I kind of stepped away. Ran into a couple of hiccups here. I bought the inner tie rods for my Festiva and the outer tie rods, thinking that they were the right ones, the ones I would use. Well, the threads that screw into the rack on the Aspire are coarse thread, and the Festiva are a very fine thread, so the inners don't work. The outers do work. So you would use the inner tie rods from an Aspire. So if you're going to do an Aspire swap, steering rack swap, get Aspire inners and Festiva outers. So I have just lightly cleaned up the rack, threw a little bit of paint on it, and it's not drying, so that's going to be fun putting that back in, slightly sticky. Also, I thought that the rubber mounts for the Festiva rack would work on the Aspire rack. They do not. So if you're doing this job, either go on the festivastore.com and order yourself some new steering rack rubbers for mounting a steering rack in a Festiva. Order those. He has those if you're doing an Aspire swap, or I think even a Kia Rio 2001 to 2003. Those work as well. From what I've heard, from what I've read, just being on the old internets, is that the Kia Rio steering rack is the better choice due to its improved lock-to-lock total. Now what I did, and I didn't video this and I should have, is I had the Festiva rack here, smacked a pair of vice grips on it, and I went to the end, I went from lock to lock, and it was like just over three and a half, I'm going to say like 3 5/8 rotations. So I got the hiccups here. I got the Aspire rack and I put that up, and it was just under 4. So it's like a little tiny bit more for the Aspire steering rack. So I mean that's going to make driving the car, I think, not quite as sporty as even the stock Festiva rack. So I think my unprofessional opinion kind of agrees with the people on the internet who are saying the Kia Rio is the sorry, there's somebody over there talking. The Kia Rio is the preferred rack for these cars, and I think of course you'll probably need the inner Kia and the outer Festiva if you're keeping your Festiva spindles. And of course if you're doing an Aspire swap for your front end to go to 4x100, you would get the Aspire outer tie rods, and the same thing for the Kia. I think those swap out as well. So if you put Kia front spindles on, you get Kia outer tie rods. Pretty no-brainer there. So what I've got is the Aspire steering rack with my new Festiva outers. Unfortunately, I had to use the original Aspire inners for now. because I don't have inners to put on because I bought the wrong ones. Didn't know, didn't research, didn't think about it. That's on me. So basically what we've got to do now is just kind of reverse of installation. So I left the tie rods off the car. This is going to make installation of the rack much easier, and you just kind of snake it up through the passenger side between the firewall, and so you snake that up between the steering, the CV axle on the passenger side and the firewall. You kind of just put the driver's side up in there first, stick it all the way through, push that passenger inner tie rod up, and then pull it back through, line up your steering knuckle, put that on, tighten the bolt down, finger tighten that a little bit, make sure it's your steering wheel and your rack are in neutral centered positions. That'll be fun, I've never done that. And then, of course, your tie rods will be out there. Screw on your tie rods, and yeah, and then from there, just, you know, snug everything up and drop her down and see how your alignment looks. I'm going to do a redneck alignment because I don't care. So it's going to be close. I kind of have the lock nuts kind of just a little bit screwed in a little tighter than where they should be set. So I'll just run these tie rods up and then lock down those lock nuts, and I should be in the ballpark. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring you guys back after I get all this stuff done. Now I just want to give you, just from doing this, a few words of advice if you're going to try to do this on your own. Take this advice, please, because I kind of jump into things. I'm kind of a hammer-fisted guy. I just kind of go and just jump in. And that's kind of bit me in the ass here because I don't have the right inner tie rods. I also had to reuse the boots, the inner rack and pinion or inner tie rod boots from the Festiva. Now they do work, but I really had to kind of stretch them out to make them fit properly, and I had a hell of a time getting them on the rack. They're a little small, so I did finally get them on there and clamp them down. If I was to do this again, and there were people who gave me this advice, they said to take the inner tie rods off on the car, and then the rack basically just falls right out. And that would have happened. The only issue I had with that is that the one inner tie rod I did loosen to figure out that I bought the wrong inner tie rods was an absolute bear to get off of the rack. So I don't think I would have did that anyway. But if I was to do this again, I would definitely take the old outer tie rods off of both sides before I tried to get the rack out of the car. That's going to give you an extra 3.5, 4 inches of like total length. It'll shorten that total distance up so you can snake it out of the car a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do now, like I said, I'm going to snake that rack back in. I'm going to get all the bolts tightened up, get that coupler thrown in there, put my new tie rods on. And then hopefully I can take this for a rip without any hardcore clunking like I had with that nasty, there she is, that nasty Festiva rack. Oh, I want to show it to you. Here is I'll get you up close and personal. So here, hopefully you can see this. Let me kind of turn you away from the sun. There we go. So here is the passenger side of the rack and pinion, and here is the inside of the rack and pinion, and here is my rattle. There's a bushing or something inside here that is bad, and so every time you hit a bump, and it's real loud, it sends that knock right through the car, right through the chassis of the car. So anyway, let me get this rack installed, and I'm going to show you what it looks like wrapped up, and we can put a bow on this thing, and now I can go for my first real drive without that clunking suspension. It's been driving me nuts for like probably 3-4 weeks. So we'll be right back with this, and hopefully we'll wrap her up. And I really hope that these videos help you guys. I know that Will over at Samet Industries, he's helped me out quite a bit on stuff, and he has a lot of really great videos. Samet Industries on YouTube, S-A-M-E-T Industries, Samet Industries, and his videos are awesome. So I've learned a lot from his videos. I'm just trying to go in different directions than what he's doing. Like he has like dash removal videos. He's got tons of stuff. I'm just going to leave it at that. There's so much stuff on there. Go check out his page and subscribe if you haven't, and subscribe here if you haven't. So yeah, so we're gonna be right back, and like I said, hopefully we can wrap this baby up. Good Lord. All right, we're back. Steering rack is in the car. It's as redneck aligned as I think it can be. I don't know, I'm looking now. Boy, they. Yeah, I think that driver's side has a little bit of toe out. So that's perfect. So I think what I'm going to start doing on these videos is maybe giving an because I'm not a professional, and hats off to all mechanics out there who do this all day, every day. Screw that, first off. Yeah, this was a manual steering rack in a car with a lot of space to work, and it was still terrible. For a shade tree mechanic, or in this case, a sweat tea mechanic, because I'm doused. It took me, start to finish, minus my lunch break, probably 2.5 hours to do this job. And before I started it, I pumped myself up with how easy it was going to be, thanks to the internets and all of the advice from all kinds of different places. Well, I ran into a bunch of trouble. I've gone over a little bit of that with you guys already. So just give yourself a lot of time, and the list of tools I gave you in the beginning of this video, go ahead and add a 17mm wrench, 17mm socket. Oh, let's see, vice grips, needle nose, tape measure, some penetrating fluid, degreaser, a little bit of paint because I sprayed the rack black before I put it back in. Let's see, what else? Oh, some axle grease. I put a little grease there, here and there. Pry bar, some rags, hammer. Yeah, that should do it. Plus all the other tools from the beginning of the video. I haven't taken it for a drive yet. I know it's going to need a little tweak. But as usual, I've gotten called in to work on my day off. Awesome. So I'm going to take it for a drive. I'll give you an update in another video to let you know how everything went. I'm going to start doing periodic updates on Ruby and Esther the Rambler in the coming days, weeks, something like that. Another subject is my friends over at Camping Companions and I have been having a race to 1,000 subscribers, and if they're watching this, I'm very sorry to say that you are in second place right now. What I've learned about YouTube in the last few weeks has been huge, and I will share that with you if you want me to. I'm about 40 subscribers ahead of you, almost to 800. So if you haven't subscribed and you want to see more stuff like this, fixing cars, working on old stuff like the Rambler back here, just some fun stuff like hot sauce taste tests, you know, who doesn't like that? Maybe a little beer taste test. That kind of goes hand in hand with shade tree mechanics. If you can't have beers while you're working, just don't do it. But anyway, please subscribe. Push me to 1,000, please. Please comment. If you have anything to say on here, something I screwed up, something that you like, or you just want to be like, you suck, that's fine. A comment's a comment for me. Any publicity is good for me. So, thank you so much for hanging out. Please stick around for more. Click that bell if you want to get more updates, because I'm going to be putting out more videos. For sure. So, yeah, thanks for coming by, and we'll see you next time.